What if one moment of injustice could spark a revolution, turning a single act of discrimination into a force that reshapes empires? Would you dare to stand up?
3 seconds was all it took for Susan Harper to decide Marcus Grant didn't belong in the first-class lounge. His custom suit and quiet dignity meant nothing. All she saw was his skin. "Security," she whispered, eyes narrowing with practiced suspicion. What she couldn't see was the empire Marcus had built from nothing and the billions at his command. As security escorted him away, passengers averted their eyes. All except young Jaden, who recognized the tech icon immediately. Marcus's face betrayed nothing as he made one call. "Protocol. Falcon, begin observation mode." In those words, Prestige Airways' fate was sealed. They thought they were removing an unwelcome passenger. Instead, they had ignited a war against a man who had spent his life preparing for this moment. When discrimination would finally meet its match in power, strategy, and unstoppable justice. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The sleek, black Bentley pulled up to the departures terminal of Washington National Airport with barely a sound. As the chauffeur stepped out to open the rear passenger door, Marcus Grant gathered his leather portfolio and adjusted his platinum cufflinks, a gift to himself when he closed his first billion-dollar deal. "Will you be needing any assistance with your luggage, Mr. Grant?" the chauffeur asked, his posture perfectly straight. Marcus shook his head. "Just the carry-on, Thomas. I travel light these days." He stepped onto the curb, cutting an impressive figure in his custom-tailored Tom Ford suit that accentuated his athletic build. At 42, Marcus carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was and what he was worth. "Very good, sir. Will you need pickup upon your return? I'll send the details once I land in San Francisco." Marcus took the handle of his sleek carry-on luggage. "And Thomas, take the rest of the day off. That's an order." The chauffeur smiled. "Thank you, sir." As Marcus entered the terminal, he felt the familiar shift in energy that always happened when he walked into spaces not historically designed for men who looked like him. Subtle double takes from travelers scrolling through their phones. A security guard who straightened up just a bit more when Marcus passed. A white woman who clutched her purse slightly tighter. Marcus noticed it all but kept his expression neutral. These moments were so common they had become white noise in the symphony of his life, annoying but predictable. He'd learned long ago that reacting only gave others power over his peace. The first-class check-in line was empty, and Marcus approached the counter where 2 gate agents were chatting. The younger woman, whose name tag read Emily, smiled automatically, but the older agent, Susan Harper, according to her badge, paused mid-sentence and gave Marcus a long, assessing look. "Good morning," Marcus said, sliding his ID and platinum frequent flyer card across the counter. "Prestige Airways to San Francisco, 11:30 departure." Susan took his documents with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And how are you today, sir?" The pause before "sir" was subtle, but unmistakable. "I'm well, thank you." Marcus maintained eye contact, his voice measured and calm. Susan tapped at her keyboard with unnecessary force. "Business or pleasure today?" "Business, I'm sure." She glanced at his ID, then back at him, as if confirming the photo matched. "Grant, Marcus Grant." "That's correct." Susan leaned toward Emily and whispered something. Emily's eyes widened, slightly before she composed herself. Marcus caught fragments. "That startup guy, and probably just lucked into some money." Marcus had built a multi-billion-dollar AI empire from nothing, but he'd grown accustomed to being diminished as that startup guy. "Your boarding pass, Mr. Grant," Susan said, handing him the document with barely concealed reluctance. "First-class passengers may proceed to the premium security lane in the first-class lounge. Boarding begins at 10:45. Thank you. Marcus collected his documents, noting how Susan's eyes followed him as he walked away. The TSA security process was uneventful, though Marcus was randomly selected for additional screening, a statistically improbable event that happened nearly every time he flew. He submitted to the extra pat-down without comment, keeping his face neutral despite the indignity. 20 minutes later, Marcus approached the entrance to the Prestige Airways First Class lounge. A different agent stood at the podium, a young white man with blonde hair who brightened when he saw Marcus approaching. "Good morning, sir. May I see your boarding pass and ID?" Marcus had just reached for his documents when Susan suddenly appeared behind the podium, slightly out of breath, as if she'd hurried to intercept him. "I'll handle this one, Ryan," she said, dismissing the younger agent with a curt nod. Ryan looked confused but stepped aside. Marcus handed over his boarding pass and ID again. Susan examined them with exaggerated scrutiny, turning the boarding pass over as if searching for some flaw, some reason to deny him. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked quietly. "Just doing my job, sir." The way she emphasized "sir" made it sound like an insult. "This first-class ticket seems unusual." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Unusual how?" "Well, these are very expensive seats." Susan's eyes narrowed. "And we need to be sure that all passengers are in their proper place." Several travelers in the vicinity slowed their pace, sensing the tension. Marcus was acutely aware of the eyes on him, the silent judgment, the assumptions being made. "I assure you my ticket is valid," Marcus said, his voice still calm but with a new edge of steel beneath it. Susan scanned his boarding pass, frowning at the computer screen. "This ticket? It's probably someone else's." She looked up at him. "Did you find this boarding pass, sir? Or maybe it was purchased for you by an employer?" The implication hung in the air, heavy and offensive. A few feet away, an older white man in a golf shirt and khakis snorted derisively. "Maybe he's lost," the man said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Coach is that way," he pointed toward the main terminal. Susan didn't correct the man or defend her passenger. Instead, she seemed emboldened by the comment, standing straighter. "I'm going to need additional verification," she said. "This doesn't seem right." Marcus carefully extracted his wallet and removed a black American Express Centurion card, the credit card so exclusive most people had only heard rumors of its existence. "Will this help verify my identity?" he asked, his voice perfectly level. Susan's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Anyone could have that. I'm going to need to call security." She picked up a phone, turning her back to Marcus as she dialed. Marcus didn't protest. He'd been here before, too many times to count. Fighting would only escalate the situation, turning him into the angry black man narrative that would surely follow. Instead, he stepped to the side and waited, his posture perfect, his expression unreadable. Within minutes, a security supervisor appeared, a tall, broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair, moving with the economy of motion that suggested military training. His nameplate read, "Vincent Brooks." "What seems to be the problem here?" Brooks asked, his voice gruff but professional. "This gentleman is attempting to access the first-class lounge with what I believe may be fraudulent documentation," Susan said, emphasizing gentleman with the same disdainful tone she'd used. "For sir," Vincent Brooks turned to Marcus, his eyes registering a brief flash of recognition before his professional mask returned. "Sir, may I see your ID and boarding pass?" Marcus handed them over without comment. Brooks examined them carefully, then looked at Susan. "Ms. Harper, everything appears to be in order," he said. "Mr. Grant's documentation is valid." Susan's face tightened. "But he doesn't—" She caught herself. "I mean, it seemed suspicious. The system flagged—" "The system flagged nothing," Brooks interrupted firmly. I see no alerts on this passenger. I want him removed from the lounge area, Susan insisted. Just to be safe. We can't be too careful these days. Brooks hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but bound by protocol. Sir, I apologize, but would you mind coming with me while we sort this out? It's just procedure. Marcus nodded at once. Of course. As Vincent began to escort him away, Marcus noticed a young black man in a prestige Airways intern uniform watching the scene with wide, horrified eyes. The young man's name tag read Jaden, and he was frantically typing something on his phone. Marcus followed Vincent Brooks toward the security office, maintaining his dignity with every step. Once they were out of earshot of the lounge, he removed his phone from his pocket and made a call. "This is Grant," he said quietly. "Protocol Falcon, full spectrum engagement. Begin observation mode." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, just as Vincent Brooks opened the door to the security office. "Mr. Grant, It's all right, Mr. Brooks," Marcus said. "I understand you're doing your job." Vincent looked pained. "For what it's worth, sir, I recognize who you are. This shouldn't be happening." Marcus merely nodded. He'd been preparing for moments like this his entire life. This wasn't the first time, and sadly it wouldn't be the last. But unlike the previous incidents, this time would have consequences. Meanwhile, in the terminal, young Jaden Carter was texting frantically to his friend in the IT department. "Dude, they just messed with Marcus Grant." The Marcus Grant? The man basically invented half the systems running this airport. We are so screwed. The IT break room was typically quiet at this hour, but Daniel Hayes nearly spit out his coffee when he read Jaden's text. He immediately called his friend. "Are you serious right now?" Daniel demanded. "Marcus Grant, the founder of Grant Innovations?" "Dead serious," Jaden hissed into his phone, ducking behind a column to avoid being seen by his supervisor. Susan Harper and security just escorted him away like he was some kind of criminal, all because he was trying to enter the first-class lounge. "Do you realize who that man is?" Daniel's voice rose in panic. "His AI systems run half the infrastructure in every major airport in America. Grant Innovations security protocols are used by the Pentagon, for God's sake." "I know exactly who he is," Jaden replied. "My senior project at Howard was based on his early algorithms. He's a legend, man." And they just treated him like he stole something. As Jaden and Daniel processed the gravity of what they'd witnessed, their conversation echoed the story of a man whose name had become synonymous with innovation and excellence. A story that began in much humbler circumstances. 28 years earlier, 8-year-old Marcus sat alone on the steps of Oakwood Foster Home, clutching a worn notebook filled with numbers and diagrams beyond the comprehension of most adults. His social worker, Ms. Thompson, sat beside him, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "Your aunt's not coming today, Marcus," she said softly. "I'm so sorry." Marcus nodded, unsurprised. His aunt, his only living relative after his parents' death in a car accident 2 years prior, had made promises before. She rarely kept them. "It's okay," he said, continuing to scribble equations in his notebook. "I need to finish this anyway." Ms. Thompson peered at his work. "What are you working on?" "It's a system," he explained, his small face serious beyond his years. "To predict patterns. If you can predict patterns, you can prepare for what happens next." Ms. Thompson's heart broke a little. Of course, this brilliant child who had lost everything at 6 years old would be obsessed with predicting the future, with preventing the next disaster before it struck. "You're a special kid, Marcus," she said. "Someday, everyone's going to know it." By 14, Marcus had moved through 4 foster homes, enduring racial bullying, jealousy over his intelligence, and the constant struggle of being the only black child in predominantly white schools and neighborhoods. He'd learned to keep his head down, to observe, to speak only when necessary. At Lincoln High School, math teacher Mr. Coleman recognized something extraordinary in the quiet teenager who completed calculus problems while his classmates struggled with basic algebra. "You're wasting your time here," Mr. Coleman told him after class one day. "You need to be challenged." Marcus shrugged. "I challenge myself." "With what?" Hesitantly, Marcus pulled out his latest notebook. He'd filled dozens by now and showed Mr. Coleman the code he'd been developing. Mr. Coleman stared at the pages, his expression shifting from curiosity to astonishment. This is graduate level work. What exactly are you building?" "A predictive model for financial markets," Marcus said quietly. "It's just a hobby." "A hobby?" Mr. Coleman looked at him in disbelief. "Marcus, this is extraordinary." For the first time in years, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. By 17, Marcus was working 3 jobs: mornings at a coffee shop before school, evenings at the library, and weekends washing dishes at a local restaurant. Every penny went toward the refurbished computer parts he'd assembled in his tiny bedroom at his latest foster home. "You're going to burn yourself out, kid," his foster father Robert warned him one night, finding Marcus still awake at 3 a.m., coding by the glow of his monitor. "I'm fine," Marcus insisted, not looking away from the screen. "What's so important? That it can't wait until morning?" Marcus hesitated. Robert had been decent to him. Not warm, not a father figure, but not cruel either. "I'm finishing my app. The scholarship applications for MIT are due next week, and I need this to work." Robert squinted at the screen. "Nizane, what's it do?" "It analyzes historical weather patterns and crop yields to predict food shortages before they happen," Marcus explained. "It could give aid organizations months of advanced warning." Robert stared at him for a long moment. "You're something else, you know that?" He shook his head in wonder. "Get some sleep, Marcus. Even brilliant minds need rest." For once, Marcus took advice. He got 3 hours of sleep before his morning shift. When he returned home that afternoon, Robert was waiting with an envelope. "This came for you. Express mail." Marcus opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter offering him a full scholarship to MIT. His foster parents threw him a small party that weekend, the first celebration anyone had ever held in his honor. It should have been the beginning of a perfect success story. It wasn't. 2 years later, 19-year-old Marcus sat in a sterile conference room in downtown Boston, facing 3 white men in expensive suits who smiled too much. "Your algorithm is impressive, Mr. Grant," said Gerald Thornton, the silver-haired venture capitalist at the center. "Rough around the edges, but we see potential." "Thank you," Marcus replied, maintaining eye contact despite his discomfort. He'd spent 2 years refining his predictive food shortage system into something that could save thousands of lives. "We're prepared to offer you $50,000 for the IP," said another man, Stephen Marshall, according to the business card on the table. Marcus frowned. "The projected value is in the millions." Thornton laughed as if Marcus had told a charming joke. "That's very optimistic. Look, we're taking all the risk here. You're a student with an unproven concept." "A concept I built and tested myself," Marcus countered. "It works. The World Food Program has already expressed interest." "Such passion," Thornton said condescendingly. "But you need to understand how business works. We have the connections, the infrastructure. You want to strip the humanitarian application and sell it to hedge funds," Marcus interrupted, finally understanding. "That's not what it's for." The third man, Edward Collins, sighed impatiently. "Mr. Grant, let's be practical. You're a sophomore from nowhere, with no family connections, no wealth behind you. This offer is generous." Marcus stood up. "Thank you for your time, gentlemen." "Don't be foolish," Thornton warned. "You turn this down, we'll develop something similar in-house. You'll get nothing. I'll take my chances." Marcus collected his prototype and left. 6 months later, Thornton's firm launched a derivative of Marcus's system, having reverse-engineered aspects of it from the demonstration. They made millions. Marcus received nothing, not even credit. It was the first betrayal, but not the last. It taught him a crucial lesson. In the world of business, power was everything, and he had none, yet. While Jaden continued his frantic text exchange with Daniel, similar conversations were happening across the airport as word spread rapidly among the staff. Marcus Grant was being detained in the security office. Vincent Brooks was visibly uncomfortable as he went through the motions of checking Marcus's documentation again. "I apologize for the inconvenience, Mr. Grant," he said formally. "This appears to be a misunderstanding." Marcus remained calm. "Is it, though?" Vincent's eyes met his briefly before looking away. "Sir, a misunderstanding implies unintentional error," Marcus said. "This felt quite intentional." Vincent didn't respond immediately. After 20 years in airport security following his military service, he'd seen patterns emerge. He'd witnessed the random selections that weren't random at all. He'd observed the extra scrutiny applied to certain passengers, particularly successful-looking black men who dared to occupy first-class spaces. "I can't comment on that, sir," Vincent finally said. "You don't need to," Marcus replied. "Your silence speaks volumes." Vincent cleared his throat. "You're free to go, Mr. Grant. I'll personally escort you back to the lounge." "That won't be necessary. I believe my flight is boarding soon anyway." As Marcus left the security office, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. "Mr. Grant, this is Jaden Carter, Prestige intern. What happened to you was wrong. Many of us here respect you greatly." Marcus paused, considering. Then he typed back, "Stay observant. Truth reveals itself to the patient." Outside the terminal, in a sleek black SUV with tinted windows, a woman watched the airport entrance with laser focus. Nora Adebayo had been head of global security for Grant Innovations for 5 years, since Marcus had personally recruited her away from her senior position at the CIA. At 45, with her close-cropped hair and perpetually alert eyes, Nora carried herself with the quiet assurance of someone who had seen the worst of humanity and knew how to counter it. Her phone rang. "Adebayo," she answered crisply. "It's me," came Marcus's voice. "Protocol Falcon is active." "Understood. Assets in place. Moving into position now. I'm boarding shortly." Nora nodded, though Marcus couldn't see her. "Initial intel on Prestige is concerning. Heavy ties to offshore accounts, particularly in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Their CEO, Edward Langston, plays golf with half the Senate Transportation Committee. Vulnerabilities, numerous," Nora replied, bringing up a secured tablet. "Their cybersecurity is outdated. Internal culture is toxic. 18 sexual harassment settlements in the last 5 years, all buried. And their flight safety record is maintained through aggressive legal suppression of incidents." "Perfect," Marcus said, his voice revealing nothing of what he was thinking. "They're rotten from the inside." "What's the play here, Marcus?" Nora asked, dropping formality as she often did when they were strategizing. There was a pause before Marcus answered. "They humiliated me because they thought I was powerless, because they saw my skin and made assumptions. This isn't about revenge, Nora. No, it's about accountability. It's about consequences. These systems persist because they're never challenged by someone with the resources to fight back." Nora smiled grimly. "And you have resources more than they can imagine," Marcus confirmed. "Prepare full-spectrum engagement. I want every skeleton in every Prestige closet exposed." "And Susan Harper?" Nora asked. "Her too. No one is collateral damage in this. Everyone who participates in these systems makes a choice." Meanwhile, across town at Prestige Airways corporate headquarters, CEO Edward Langston was enjoying a whiskey in his office after returning from a round of golf with Senator William Carter, chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. "Great news, Richard," he told his CFO, Richard Bennett. "The proposed safety regulations will be indefinitely delayed for further study." Richard raised his eyebrows. "That saves us what? 30 million in upgrades?" "At least," Edward confirmed, swirling his drink. "William's a good friend. He understands how business works." The intercom on his desk buzzed. "Mr. Langston, there's a situation developing at National Airport involving a high-profile passenger. PR thinks you should be briefed." Edward sighed dramatically. "Can't PR handle anything themselves these days?" "Fine, put them through." A nervous voice came on the line. "Sir, a passenger named Marcus Grant was apparently denied access to our first-class lounge, despite having valid documentation. It's already generating social media attention." Edward frowned. "Marcus Grant. Why do I know that name?" "He's the founder and CEO of Grant Innovations," the PR representative explained. "The AI firm." "Oh, right, the tech guy. African-American. Fellow?" "Yes, sir." Edward waved dismissively, though no one could see him. "Standard response, then. Prestige Airways is committed to diversity and inclusion. Blah, blah, blah. Isolated incident, not reflective of our values. You know the drill." "Sir, I think this might require more attention. Mr. Grant is extremely influential." "Look," Edward interrupted, "just blame it on the employee and move on. We've handled these situations before. No one has the attention span for outrage anymore. It'll be forgotten by tomorrow." "Yes, sir," the PR rep said dubiously. After hanging up, Edward turned to Richard. "You see what I have to deal with. Everyone panics over nothing these days." Richard looked less certain. "Grant Innovations. Aren't they the ones who developed the new air traffic control AI system?" "Probably," Edward shrugged. "They're all the same, these tech companies. Too much money, too little real-world experience. Don't worry about it." Back at the airport, Emily approached Susan in the staff break room, her expression troubled. "Susan, what happened with that passenger was wrong," she said quietly. Susan looked up from her coffee, eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" "That man had every right to be in the lounge. His documentation was valid." "You know it was." "I was following protocol," Susan said defensively. "He seemed suspicious." "How?" Emily challenged. "Because he was black? He was better dressed than half the passengers. In first class." Susan's face hardened. "Men like that always play the victim, always looking for special treatment." "He wasn't asking for special treatment," Emily argued. "He was asking for the same treatment anyone else would get." "You're too young to understand," Susan dismissed her. "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know trouble when I see it." Emily stared at her in disbelief. "That's exactly the problem, isn't it? You see trouble when there isn't any." She turned to leave, then paused. "You know who that was, right? Marcus Grant. His company is worth billions." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Susan's face. "The name means nothing to me." "Maybe it should," Emily replied. "Because I guarantee it means something to our executives." As Marcus's flight prepared for boarding, he received another message from Nora. "Phase 1. Ready, on your command." Marcus looked out the window at the Prestige Airways plane waiting on the tarmac, its corporate logo gleaming in the morning sun. Then he typed back a simple response. "Begin. Then we expose them piece by piece." As Marcus Grant's flight touched down, in San Francisco, his phone buzzed with notifications. The incident at Washington National had already made its way online, with shaky cell phone footage showing his interaction with Susan Harper and his subsequent escort away from the first-class lounge. "This is what happens when you fly while black," read one trending post, accompanied by the video. Another showed a side-by-side comparison of Susan Harper's smiling professional headshot next to a still image of her, confronting Marcus. By the time he stepped into his waiting car, major news outlets had picked up the story. "Breaking news today," announced a CNN anchor, her expression grave. Tech billionaire and AI pioneer Marcus Grant was allegedly denied access to a first-class airport lounge, despite having valid documentation. Prestige Airways is facing accusations of racial profiling following the incident, which was captured on video by multiple witnesses. Marcus watched the coverage impassively as his driver navigated through San Francisco traffic. His phone rang. "Nora Adebayo, the news cycle has it," she informed him. "Social media response is divided but trending in your favor. Prestige's PR team is scrambling, and our other initiatives proceeding as planned. First digital insertion complete. We're monitoring systems now." Marcus nodded, though Nora couldn't see him. "Good. Keep me updated." Within hours, Prestige Airways released an official statement, plastered across their social media accounts and sent to major news outlets. Prestige Airways is deeply committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels of our operation. The incident involving Mr. Grant appears to be an isolated case of a rogue employee not following our established protocols. We are investigating the matter fully and will take appropriate action. We extend our sincere apologies to Mr. Grant and all our valued customers. At Prestige headquarters, Edward Langston scanned the statement with disinterest before tossing the tablet aside. "There, problem solved," he declared to his crisis management team assembled in his office. "Now, can we please focus on actual business?" Clara Mitchell, Prestige's chief communications officer, pressed her lips together in concern. "Sir, I don't think this will be sufficient. The optics are extremely bad, and Mr. Grant is highly influential in tech circles." Edward rolled his eyes. "It's a PR hiccup, Clara, not the end of the world. Blame the employee, make vague promises about doing better, and move on. That's how these things work." "Sir," Clara tried again, "I think we should reach out to Mr. Grant directly, offer a personal apology, perhaps some form of—" "For what?" Edward interrupted, his voice rising. "For a momentary inconvenience? He still made his flight, didn't he? Besides, this isn't the first time we've dealt with passengers who claim discrimination. They usually settle quietly once legal dangles the right amount in front of them." Clara exchanged concerned glances with Richard Bennett, the CFO, who had remained silent throughout the meeting. Richard cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should at least consider—" "Meeting adjourned," Edward announced, standing abruptly. "I have a charity dinner to attend. Handle this however you need to, but keep it contained and inexpensive." As the executives filed out, Clara hung back. "Richard, I'm worried. This feels different." Richard nodded slightly. "I know, but you know Edward. Once his mind is made up—" He trailed off, glancing at his phone as it vibrated with an incoming call. "I have to take this. It's security at Washington National Airport." Susan Harper strutted through the employee lounge, basking in attention from colleagues who had seen the news. "I was just doing my job," she told a group of fellow gate agents, "protecting the integrity of our premium spaces. You never know. These days—" Emily stood nearby, arms crossed. "That's not what happened, and you know it." Susan's smile faltered. "Excuse me? You targeted him specifically. You left your post to intercept him at the lounge." The room fell silent as other employees watched the confrontation unfold. Susan's face hardened. "You need to be careful, Emily. Making false accusations against a senior colleague could impact your future here." Before Emily could respond, their supervisor entered the break room. "Susan, I need to see you in my office. Immediately." Susan's smug expression vanished. "What's this about, Jeff?" "Now, Susan, His tone left no room for argument. As Susan followed him out, her phone pinged with a notification. It was from Prestige HR. All employee social media accounts are now subject to review as part of our updated social media policy. Please refrain from commenting on recent events involving Prestige Airways. Meanwhile, travelers across the country were experiencing unexplained glitches in the Prestige Airways booking system. Flights disappeared from the scheduling database, only to reappear hours later. Premium customers found their reservations downgraded to economy without explanation. Payment systems declined valid credit cards, while occasionally processing the same transaction multiple times. At Prestige IT headquarters in Dallas, systems administrators worked frantically to identify the source of the disruptions. "It's like, the system is fighting itself," explained the lead IT engineer to his increasingly frustrated director. "We patch one issue, and 3 more appear. I've never seen anything like it." "Could it be a hack?" asked the director. "Maybe, but there's no obvious point of entry. Our security protocols are all registering as intact." The engineer pushed back from his desk in frustration. "The weird thing is, it's almost like the disruptions are targeted." "What do you mean?" "The glitches seem to be affecting our most profitable routes and highest value customers. It's too specific to be random." Back in San Francisco, Marcus sat in his hotel suite, watching real-time data flow across multiple screens. Nora's voice came through the secure video connection. "Operation Mirror is active," she reported. "Our people have identified multiple vulnerabilities in Prestige's executive communications. We're gathering intelligence on Langston and his inner circle. And our digital insertion, performing as designed, subtle enough to seem like system errors, but impactful enough to hurt their bottom line." Marcus nodded approvingly. "What? About our human assets?" "The airport employee, Jaden Carter, has been surprisingly helpful. He's provided access to internal communications channels, and we've identified other potential allies within Prestige who seem unhappy with the current leadership." "Good. What did you find on Susan Harper?" Nora's expression turned grimmer. "She's a piece of work. Multiple passenger complaints over the years, all buried by management. She has a pattern of targeting passengers of color, particularly in premium cabins. HR has a file on her, but they've taken no substantive action." "And Vincent Brooks?" "Former Air Force, 20 years in airport security. By all accounts, a decent man in a difficult position, ethical but constrained by the system." Marcus considered this. "Reach out to him quietly. I want to know where he stands." As this conversation was taking place, Jaden was working his shift at the airport, feeling a mix of anxiety and purpose. His phone buzzed with a text from Daniel in IT. "Something weird is happening in our systems. Boss is panicking." "Does this have anything to do with what happened yesterday?" Jaden checked to make sure no one was watching before replying. "Maybe. Keep me posted." Several terminals away, Vincent Brooks was reviewing security camera footage from the previous day, focusing on Marcus's interaction with Susan. He rewound and replayed the scene several times, his frown deepening. It was worse than he remembered. Susan's body language, her clear disdain, the unnecessary escalation. His office phone rang. "Brooks," he answered. "Mr. Brooks," came a smooth, professional female voice. "My name is Nora Adebayo, Head of Global Security for Grant Innovations. Do you have a moment to speak privately?" Vincent stiffened. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important right now. What matters is that we have a mutual acquaintance in Marcus Grant." Vincent glanced around his empty office, then lowered his voice. "What is this about, Ms. Adebayo?" "It's about justice, Mr. Brooks, and choices. Mr. Grant was impressed by your professionalism yesterday, despite the difficult position you were placed in." "I was just doing my job." "Yes, but the question is, whose job were you really doing? Following protocol or enabling discrimination?" Vincent's jaw tightened. That's unfair. I followed procedure. Perhaps, but you knew it was wrong. I can hear it in your voice even now. After a long silence, Vincent spoke again. What does Mr. Grant want from me? Nothing you're not willing to give. Just truth, when the time comes. After the call ended, Vincent sat motionless, staring at the security footage still frozen on his screen. In his 20 years at the airport, he'd seen countless incidents like this one. Moments where procedure became a shield for prejudice. He'd always followed the rules, stayed in his lane. But for what? At a downtown San Francisco restaurant, Marcus met with a distinguished older woman whose silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a sleek bun. Evelyn Carter had been one of the first black female CEOs in the tech industry, breaking barriers decades before Marcus entered the scene. I saw the news, she said as they settled at their private table. Brings back memories. Marcus nodded. Some things never change, but some things do, Evelyn countered, studying him. 20 years ago, you would have had no recourse. Now you have resources, influence, power. I do, Marcus agreed. And I intend to use them. Evelyn sipped her wine thoughtfully. I taught you patience for a reason, Marcus. The long game always wins. I'm not being impulsive. Aren't you? This feels personal. It is personal, Marcus acknowledged. But it's also bigger than me. Prestige Airways has systematically enabled discrimination while pretending going to be what? Judge, jury, and executioner? Marcus's expression remained calm. No, I'm just going to create transparency. What happens after that is up to the market, the regulators, and the public. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. You've thought this through. You taught me well. She nodded slowly. Just remember what else I taught you. True power isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. I remember, Marcus assured her. This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. As their dinner continued across the country, the Prestige Airways systems continued to deteriorate. Customers flooded social media with complaints about canceled flights, lost reservations, and multiple credit card charges. The hashtag #PrestigeChaos began trending alongside Fly While Black. In the IT war room at Prestige headquarters, the director slammed his fist on the table. How is this possible? We've patched every vulnerability. Sir? A junior analyst spoke up hesitantly. I think I might know what's happening. All eyes turned to her. There's a pattern to the disruptions. They started right after the incident with Marcus Grant. Coincidence? The director dismissed. Maybe not, the analyst persisted. Grant Innovations created the backbone of our booking and scheduling systems 3 years ago. What if there's a back door we never knew about? A tense silence filled the room. That's impossible, the director finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. Our security team would have found it, unless it was designed not to be found until activated. At that moment, Nora Adebayo was briefing her team of cybersecurity experts from a secure location. Phase 2 begins now, she instructed. Focus on their internal communications. I want every email, every text message, every internal memo related to discriminatory practices or regulatory violations. One of her analysts looked up from his screen. We've already uncovered something interesting. Edward Langston has a separate email server for communications he wanted kept off the official system. Nora's eyes narrowed. Can you access it? Already done. It's enlightening. Meanwhile, Jaden was finishing his shift when he overheard a conversation between two managers. They're looking for a scapegoat, one said in a hushed voice. Board's putting pressure on Edward. Who are they targeting? Security Supervisor Brooks. They're saying he should have de-escalated with Grant instead of removing him. Jaden's heart raced as he pretended to organize pamphlets nearby, straining to hear more. "That's bull," the second manager replied. "Brooks was just following protocol. Susan's the one who created the whole mess. Doesn't matter. They need someone with authority to take the fall. Susan's too easy a target. They'd be admitting direct discrimination. Better to frame it as a security overreaction." Jaden waited until they left before pulling out his phone to text Daniel. "They're planning to scapegoat Vincent Brooks for the Grant incident. Can you confirm?" Minutes later, Daniel replied, "Confirmed. Just saw the draft announcement. They're suspending him pending investigation." That night, as the media frenzy around Prestige Airways intensified, a simple message appeared simultaneously on the screens of every Prestige employee's computer. "This is only the beginning." The message vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Prestige employees stunned and executives panicked. In the company's Atlanta headquarters, Edward Langston paced his office, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what it costs," he barked. "I want this contained now. Get me Lucas Vaughn." Lucas Vaughn was a name whispered in corporate circles, the fixer brought in when normal PR strategies failed. His specialty was crisis management through intimidation, leveraging connections across media, politics, and occasionally the darker corners of information gathering. 3 hours later, Lucas strode into Edward's office without knocking, a lean, immaculately dressed man with cold eyes and a reputation for ruthless efficiency. "This is worse than you described," were his first words, tossing a tablet onto Edward's desk. "Your stock is down 12% since opening. Social media is a bloodbath, and that message on your employees' computers? You've been hacked, Edward. Thoroughly." Edward slumped into his chair. "Can you fix it?" "I can manage it," Lucas corrected. "But it will require decisive action, no half measures." "Whatever it takes." Lucas nodded once. "I'll need complete authority over your communications team, access to all personnel files, and a dedicated security detail. You have it. Just stop the bleeding." First thing, we identify and neutralize internal threats. Anyone who might be sympathetic to Grant or tempted to leak information. "You think we have a mole?" Lucas's smile was cold. "Organizations always do, especially during a crisis." The next morning, Jaden arrived at work to find security personnel stationed throughout the terminal. As he approached the employee entrance, a guard stepped forward. "Jaden Carter?" Jaden froze. "Yes? Come with me, please." He was led to a small conference room where Lucas Vaughn waited, reviewing a file. "Mr. Carter," Lucas said without looking up. "Please sit." Jaden remained standing. "What is this about?" Lucas finally raised his eyes. "Your communications with Daniel Hayes in IT, your interest in the Marcus Grant incident, your access to sensitive employee discussions." Jaden's throat went dry. Don't insult me by lying," Lucas cut him off. "We've reviewed your text messages, your calls, your movements through the terminal." He closed the file. "You have two options. Option 1, you're fired immediately for violating company confidentiality policies, blacklisted from the industry, and potentially face legal action for corporate espionage." Jaden's hands began to shake. "And option 2? You tell me everything you know about who's been contacting you regarding Marcus Grant, and you continue your work here, now reporting directly to me." In a similar conference room across the terminal, Vincent Brooks faced the same ultimatum from another of Lucas's team. Unlike Jaden, Vincent had decades of experience keeping his expression neutral under pressure. "I've done nothing wrong," he stated evenly. "No?" The woman across from him, Lisa Chen, according to her temporary badge, slid a printout toward him. "Your access card was used to review security footage of the Grant incident multiple times after hours. You received a call from Nora Adebayo, Grant's head of security, and your personnel file shows you filed 3 complaints about discriminatory security protocols in the past 2 years." Vincent remained silent. You're a liability, Mr. Brooks, Lisa continued, but you could be an asset instead. Tell us what Grant's people are planning. I don't know anything about Mr. Grant's plans, Vincent replied truthfully. Then you're of no use to us. Across town, in a sleek co-working space, Catherine Reed, Chief Operating Officer of Prestige Airways, met with Nora Adebayo under the pretense of a personal day. This is extremely irregular, Catherine said, her voice low, despite the privacy of their meeting pod. These are irregular times, Nora replied calmly. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Catherine straightened her jacket, a nervous habit from her early career days. At 52, she had navigated the treacherous waters of corporate America as one of few women in aviation leadership. She had compromised often, looked the other way sometimes, but she had her limits. I assume this is about Marcus Grant, she said. It's about Prestige Airways, Nora corrected. And the rot at its core. You know what I'm talking about. Catherine's expression remained carefully neutral. I'm the COO of this company, Ms. Adebayo. Why would I help you damage it? Because you're better than it, Nora answered simply. Because you've spent a decade trying to change Prestige from within, only to be blocked by Edward Langston at every turn. Because you've reported safety violations that were buried, discrimination complaints that were ignored, and financial irregularities that magically disappeared from audits. Catherine's eyes widened slightly. How could you possibly know about... We have our sources, Nora interrupted. The question is, when the storm hits, and it will hit, which side of history do you want to be on? Catherine was silent for a long moment. What exactly are you asking of me? Nothing active, just be prepared. When evidence of Langston's misconduct becomes public, people will look to you for leadership. Be ready to provide it. As Nora left their meeting, her secure phone buzzed with an update from her team. Banking records accessed. Confirmation on offshore accounts. Langston personally authorized transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. At that same moment, Marcus was meeting with his mentor, Evelyn, again, this time in her office overlooking San Francisco Bay. It's all connected, Marcus explained, showing her documents on a secure tablet. The same banking group that denied my first business loan owns a significant share in Prestige Airways. The same board members who privately mocked my affirmative action MIT scholarship sit on Prestige's advisory board. Evelyn studied the connections. You've been tracking this for years. I track everything, Marcus replied simply. Information is power. I learned that lesson early. Evelyn handed back the tablet. What happened to that bright-eyed boy who wanted to use AI to predict food shortages and save lives? He grew up, Marcus said, his voice softer. He learned that to change the world, you need more than good intentions. You need leverage. And now you have it. Marcus nodded. Now I have it. Just be careful that in fighting monsters, you don't become one yourself. As Marcus left Evelyn's office, his phone rang with a call from Nora. We have a situation, she said without preamble. Vaughn is targeting our inside sources. Jaden Carter and Vincent Brooks are both being pressured. Expected, Marcus replied calmly. Activate countermeasures. Make sure they're protected. Already in progress. At Prestige headquarters, Lucas Vaughn was briefing Edward Langston on his progress. We've identified several potential leaks and are containing them, he reported. More importantly, we've compiled some interesting information on Marcus Grant himself. Edward leaned forward eagerly. Something we can use? Possibly. A sexual harassment allegation from an ex-employee that was settled quietly 3 years ago. Perfect, Edward smirked. Leak it to the press. I wouldn't advise that yet, Lucas cautioned. We need to verify... No, Edward interrupted. I want it out there now. Let's see how Mr. Grant likes being on the defensive. Lucas hesitated but nodded. As you wish. Within hours, a thinly sourced story appeared on a fringe news site. Tech billionaire Marcus Grant accused of sexual misconduct. The story barely had time to circulate before Nora's team intercepted it. What happened next shocked even the most seasoned media watchers. The news site suddenly published a retraction and an apology, along with leaked emails showing that Lucas Vaughn had paid for the false story. Simultaneously, legitimate news outlets received documented evidence of Edward Langston's offshore accounts, complete with transaction records and dates. CNN breaking news. Prestige Airways, CEO under investigation for financial irregularities. MSNBC. Whistleblowers reveal culture of discrimination at Prestige Airways. Wall Street Journal. SEC launches probe into Prestige Airways following leaked documents. Edward stared at the television in his office in horror as the stories broke one after another. His phone rang. It was the board chairman. "What the hell is happening, Edward?" the chairman demanded. "It's Grant," Edward sputtered. "He's orchestrating this somehow." "Fix it," the chairman ordered. "Or we will." Just as Edward hung up, his computer screen flickered and a video call connected automatically. Marcus Grant's face appeared, calm and composed. "Hello, Edward." Edward nearly jumped out of his chair. "How did you get on my secure line?" "There's nothing secure about Prestige's systems," Marcus replied evenly. "Not anymore. What do you want? Money? An apology?" Marcus almost smiled. "I have more money than you'll ever have, Edward, and your apology would be meaningless." "Then what?" "Justice, accountability, change." Marcus leaned closer to the camera. "You're not just fighting me, Edward. You're fighting the future." As the call ended abruptly, Edward lunged for his phone to call Lucas, but the screen showed only one message. "We're not shutting down a flight. We're shutting down an empire." The elegant glass conference room at Grant Innovations headquarters in San Francisco buzzed with quiet precision as Marcus's legal team assembled. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the Golden Gate Bridge stood partially shrouded in morning fog, a fitting metaphor for the veiled battle about to unfold. "The formal letter of complaint has been delivered to Prestige Airways," said Rachel Lawson, Marcus's chief legal counsel. Her tailored navy suit and no-nonsense demeanor reflected her reputation as one of the most feared litigators in corporate America. "We've accused them of racial discrimination, hostile customer environment, and violation of federal transportation equality statutes." Marcus nodded, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "And their response?" "Their legal team is scrambling," Rachel replied with the ghost of a smile. "They've requested a 48-hour extension to formulate their official response." "Granted," Marcus said. "The letter is merely a distraction anyway." Rachel exchanged glances with Nora Adebayo, who stood by the window, her posture military straight. "Phase 2 is progressing exactly as planned," Nora reported. "I've assembled a team of 20 specialists, cybersecurity experts, former journalists, financial investigators. We're preparing for coordinated exposure on multiple fronts." Marcus rose from his chair and approached the smart wall where dozens of data points connected in a complex web. Prestige Airways corporate structure, leadership lines, financial holdings, and hidden connections. "Their empire is built on sand," he observed, "hollowed out by greed, held together by intimidation and political connections. The SEC is already quietly investigating based on the initial information we've provided," Rachel added. "But they're moving cautiously due to Langston's political connections." "Politics," Marcus's voice carried a rare note of disdain. "The last refuge of the corrupt." He turned to face his team. "This isn't just about one incident or one airline. This is about systems. Systems designed to exclude, to protect the powerful, to maintain hierarchies. Susan Harper isn't the disease. She's a symptom." Speaking of Susan, Nora interjected. Our investigation has uncovered 12 previous formal complaints against her for discriminatory treatment of passengers, all buried by Prestige HR. Marcus wasn't surprised. And the young gate agent, Emily? She's being pressured to remain silent. Nora confirmed. Lucas Vaughn has been circulating implied threats about her future employability if she speaks out. A muscle tightened in Marcus's jaw, a rare display of visible emotion. Ensure she's protected. Same for Jaden and Vincent Brooks. As his team dispersed to execute their assignments, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn Carter. Langston is mobilizing his political allies. Senator Ramsey called me, asking questions about you. Be careful. Across the country at Prestige Airways headquarters, the board of directors had convened an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense, with raised voices echoing down the corridor, outside the boardroom. This is spiraling out of control, argued Thomas Freeman, one of the senior board members. We need to settle with Grant immediately, issue a public apology, and move on. Absolutely not, Edward Langston countered, his face flushed with anger. We show weakness now, and we'll have every discrimination lawyer in America at our throats. This is a shakedown, pure and simple. Catherine Reed studied the board members' faces, noting who seemed troubled by the situation versus those blindly loyal to Edward. She'd spent years watching Edward prioritize profits over people, but he'd always been careful to maintain plausible deniability. Now, with the company under scrutiny, fault lines were emerging. The stock has dropped 18% in 3 days, noted the CFO, Richard Bennett. Institutional investors are getting nervous. We need to contain this. And we will, Edward insisted. Lucas Vaughn has managed worse situations than this. Grant might have money in tech, but we have connections in Washington that he can't touch. Catherine finally spoke up. And if the allegations about financial irregularities prove true, what then, Edward? A heavy silence fell over the room as Edward fixed her with an icy stare. Those allegations are fabricated, as you well know, Catherine. I'm surprised you even suggest otherwise. Catherine held his gaze. I'm merely considering all scenarios, as any responsible executive should. The tension was broken by Edward's assistant entering with an urgent note. As he read it, the color drained from his face. What is it? Asked Thomas. Grant Innovations just released a cryptic statement on social media, Edward said, his voice tight. Sometimes giants must fall, and it's already got over 50,000 shares. Meanwhile, Jaden Carter sat in his small apartment, staring at his laptop screen. After his confrontation with Lucas Vaughn, he'd called in sick, claiming food poisoning. He knew his job was effectively over. The question was what to do next. His phone rang with an unknown number. Hello? He answered cautiously. Jaden Carter, a woman's voice responded. This is Nora Adebayo from Grant Innovations. We need to talk. Jaden's heart raced. How did you get my number? That's not important right now. What matters is your safety. Lucas Vaughn has placed you under surveillance. There's a black sedan, parked across from your building. Jaden moved to the window and carefully peered through the blinds. Sure enough, a dark car with tinted windows was stationed with a clear view of his entrance. What do they want from me? I'm just an intern. You're a witness, Jaden. And in Lucas Vaughn's world, witnesses are either controlled or neutralized. A chill ran down Jaden's spine. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying you have a choice to make, Nora replied. Stay silent and hope. Vaughn loses interest, or stand up and help us expose the truth. Either way, we'll ensure your protection. Across town, Vincent Brooks was clearing out his desk. After refusing to cooperate with Lucas Vaughn, he'd been placed on administrative leave pending investigation, a corporate euphemism for "you're finished." As he placed his service awards in a cardboard box, his secure personal phone, not his, company device, vibrated with a text. Your car is waiting in the east parking lot. Black Tesla. Driver is trustworthy. Vincent hesitated only briefly before grabbing his box and heading for the exit. 20 minutes later, he was being ushered into a private meeting room at an unmarked office building. Marcus Grant rose to greet him, extending his hand. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming." Vincent shook his hand firmly. "Not like I had much choice. My career is likely over." "Or just beginning," Marcus countered, gesturing for him to sit. "It depends on your perspective. What exactly do you want from me?" "The truth, Mr. Brooks. Nothing more." Vincent studied the man across from him, poised, measured, radiating quiet power. "I've seen the rot at Prestige for years," he admitted. "Not just with passengers, employee discrimination, security protocols that target specific groups, harassment complaints that disappear." Marcus nodded. "We've uncovered much the same, but first-hand testimony from someone of your position would be powerful." "You're asking me to be a whistleblower?" "I'm asking you to be the man I suspect you already are," Marcus replied. "One who believes in doing what's right, even when it's difficult." Back at his temporary command center, Lucas Vaughn was reviewing files on potential pressure points against Marcus Grant. "Sir," one of his assistants interrupted, "we found something interesting in Grant's past." Vaughn looked up. "What is it?" When he was starting out, his first company was effectively stolen from him by venture capitalists at Thornton Financial Group. And the principal partner there, Gerald Thornton, sits on Prestige's advisory board. He's also the one who connected Edward with several major political donors. Vaughn's eyes narrowed. "So this isn't just about the airport incident. It's personal for Grant." "Appears so, sir?" "Find everything you can on that first company and what exactly happened. We need leverage." As Vaughn's team dug deeper, Nora Adebayo's investigation was progressing on a far more damning front. In a secured digital vault, she compiled evidence of Prestige's darkest secrets. Flight maintenance records falsified to avoid costly repairs, harassment settlements with non-disclosure agreements, and, most damning of all, documentation of private charter flights linked to human trafficking operations. "This goes beyond corporate misconduct," she told Marcus during their encrypted video conference. "There are connections to cartel money laundering through their subsidiary charter company." Marcus's expression remained composed, but his eyes hardened. "Do we have definitive proof?" "Enough to launch federal investigations, flight logs, banking transfers, passenger manifests that don't match official records." "Proceed with extreme caution," Marcus instructed. "When we move, we need to be surgical. Innocent employees caught in the crossfire must be protected." That evening, as Susan Harper arrived home, she was startled to find paparazzi waiting at the end of her driveway. Cameras flashed as she quickly pulled into her garage. Inside, her phone was flooded with notifications, social media mentions, voicemails, text messages from coworkers. One caught her eye. A message from a former colleague with a link to a viral video. The video showed compiled security footage of Susan's interactions with various passengers over the past year. The pattern of discriminatory treatment was unmistakable. When viewed in sequence, her selective enforcement, her different tone with different passengers based solely on appearance, the unnecessary escalations. Cameras flashed as she quickly pulled into her garage. Inside, her phone was flooded with notifications, social media mentions, voicemails, text messages from coworkers. One caught her eye. A message from a former colleague with a link to a viral video. The video showed compiled security footage of Susan's interactions with various passengers over the past year. The pattern of discriminatory treatment was unmistakable when viewed in sequence. Her selective enforcement, her different tone with different passengers based solely on appearance, the unnecessary escalations. "Who leaked this?" she whispered. To herself, panic rising. She immediately called Edward Langston's office, but was directed to Lucas Vaughn instead. "This is a violation of my privacy," she demanded when Vaughn answered. "The company needs to defend me." "Nee," You, Vaughn replied coolly, are the least of Prestige's concerns right now. The company is dealing with a crisis that extends far beyond your personal situation. I suggest you lay low and refrain from making public statements. But I was following implied policy. Everyone knows we're supposed to be extra vigilant with certain passengers in premium cabins. That came from leadership. I advise you not to make such accusations, Ms. Harper. They could be construed as defamatory. As Susan realized she was being isolated as a scapegoat, Marcus sat alone in his hotel suite, reviewing footage from his own past, his childhood, his struggles, the early betrayals in his career. The memories weren't pleasant, but they had shaped him, forged him into who he was today. His phone buzzed with a message from Nora. Assets acquired. Ready for full-spectrum takedown. Marcus walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. Let the empire crumble, he whispered. The first signs that something was catastrophically wrong at Prestige Airways came at 4:13 a.m. Eastern Time, when their global booking system crashed completely. Emergency IT teams were called in, only to discover that backup systems were failing. To activate. By 6 a.m., as the first wave of morning flights should have been departing, chaos engulfed every Prestige terminal across the country. Check-in kiosks displayed error messages. Gate agents couldn't access passenger manifests. Security lines stretched for hours as TSA was forced to implement manual checks without electronic verification. Edward Langston was awakened by a barrage of phone calls from increasingly panicked executives. What do you mean, total system failure? He demanded of his CTO. That's impossible. We have redundancies. All compromised, the CTO explained, his voice strained. It's like someone knew exactly where our vulnerabilities were and hit them simultaneously. By mid-morning, major news networks were broadcasting live from airports nationwide, showing stranded passengers and overwhelmed staff. The Prestige stock price went into free fall as trading algorithms responded to the unfolding disaster. But the system failure was just the beginning. At precisely 9 a.m., a coordinated release of information began across multiple platforms. An investigative journalist from The Washington Post published a detailed exposé on decades of corruption inside Prestige Airways, complete with internal documents and testimony from anonymous sources. Simultaneously, a whistleblower report appeared on the SEC's public disclosure portal, outlining specific instances of financial fraud, accompanied by transaction records and board meeting minutes where safety concerns were deliberately suppressed. CNN breaking news. Cut into regular programming. This just in, multiple sources are reporting that Prestige Airways CEO Edward Langston maintained a secret set of books for investors while providing falsified safety records to federal regulators. The FBI has confirmed they are reviewing the allegations. In his office, surrounded by crisis managers and attorneys, Edward watched the coverage in stunned silence. This isn't just a hack, said Richard Bennett, the CFO. This is coordinated warfare. Where's Lucas Vaughn? Edward demanded. He's supposed to be handling this. He's trying to contain the media fallout, Richard explained. But it's like fighting a tsunami with a bucket. Edward's phone rang. It was Senator Ramsey. Turn on Fox News, the senator snapped without preamble. Edward fumbled for the remote as an aide brought up the channel. There, being interviewed live, was Senator Michael Wheeler from the Transportation Committee, standing next to Nora Adebayo. These allegations are deeply troubling, the senator was saying gravely. If verified, they represent one of the most significant breaches of public trust in aviation history. My committee will be launching a full investigation. That backstabbing son of a... Edward began, but Richard cut him off. Edward, the board chairman is calling an emergency session. They want you there in 30 minutes. As Edward fought for his corporate life, Vincent Brooks was giving a live interview to a different network. His military bearing and straightforward demeanor lent credibility to his account. I witnessed systemic discrimination that was not just tolerated but effectively encouraged, he explained calmly. When I filed reports, they disappeared into administrative black holes. The incident with Mr. Grant was just the visible tip of a very large iceberg. Across town, Jaden had also gone public. His youthful earnestness and clear moral outrage made him an instant social media hero. I watched a respected business leader being treated like a criminal for simply existing in a space where they assumed he didn't belong, Jaden told the interviewer, his voice steady despite his nervousness. And when I tried to speak up internally, I was threatened and intimidated. By noon, a hashtag was trending nationwide: Prestige Reckoning. In the executive wing at Prestige headquarters, Susan Harper was being officially terminated, escorted from the building by security while photographers captured the moment from across the street. "This is unfair," she protested as she was led out. "I was following implied policy." Everyone knew certain passengers were to be scrutinized more closely in premium cabins. Before leaving, she cornered Emily in the break room. "You did this," she hissed. "You leaked those videos." Emily stood her ground. "I did what was right. What you did to Mr. Grant and countless others was wrong, Susan. It was always wrong." "You've ruined my life," Susan spat. "No," Emily replied calmly. "You did that yourself every time you chose discrimination over dignity." As Susan was being removed, Catherine Reed received a call from Nora Adebayo. "It's time, Ms. Reed," Nora said simply. "The board is looking for leadership. They need someone untainted by Langston's corruption who can stabilize the company." "And what makes you think they'll choose me?" Catherine asked. "Because we've made sure they know you were the one executive who consistently objected to the worst of the ethical violations," Nora replied. "Your internal memos questioning safety shortcuts and discriminatory practices have been highlighted for key board members." Catherine took a deep breath. "And if I step up? Then Marcus would be interested in discussing Prestige's future with you." Meanwhile, the emergency board meeting had devolved into chaos, with Edward Langston desperately trying to maintain control. "This is a coordinated attack," he insisted. "Grant is using his tech resources to wage corporate warfare." "The question isn't who's attacking us, Edward," countered Thomas Freeman. "It's whether the allegations are true. Did you authorize offshore accounts to hide funds from regulators and shareholders? That's absurd. He was interrupted by his assistant, rushing in with a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." On the screen was an email from Edward's personal account to Gerald Thornton, discussing how to bury maintenance issues on the 737 fleet and intimidate safety whistleblowers. The blood drained from Edward's face. That's been doctored. Digital forensics can verify its authenticity," Thomas pointed out. "Edward, if even half of what's coming out is true, we're facing criminal charges, not just civil penalties." As the board moved to vote on Edward's immediate suspension, across the country, Marcus was meeting with his own board members. "Prestige. Stock has lost 47% of its value in a single day," noted his CFO. "They're on the verge of collapse." "Good," said one of the directors. "They deserve it after what they did." "Adi, no company deserves to fail if it employs thousands of innocent people," Marcus corrected. Prestige Airways employs over 28,000 workers nationwide. Most had nothing to do with its corrupt leadership or discriminatory practices. "What are you suggesting?" asked the CFO. Marcus smiled slightly. "I believe Prestige may soon be available at a very attractive price." That evening, as federal agents began seizing documents from Prestige offices nationwide, Marcus held a private call with a select group of minority shareholders from Prestige, those who had been increasingly concerned about Langston's leadership, even before the current crisis. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began, I believe we have a mutual interest in salvaging what can be saved from Prestige Airways. Mr. Grant, said one investor cautiously, given recent events, some might consider your interest in Prestige to be vindictive. On the contrary, Marcus replied smoothly, I see opportunity where others see only disaster. Prestige has a strong route network, valuable airport slots, and thousands of skilled employees. What it lacks is ethical leadership and modern governance. You're talking about an acquisition? Another investor asked. I'm talking about transformation, Marcus corrected. At the current stock price, Grant Innovations could acquire controlling interest for approximately 30% of Prestige's value just 1 week ago. That's predatory, objected one investor. That's business, countered another. And frankly, it might be the only option to prevent complete collapse. Marcus let them debate among themselves for a moment before continuing. My offer is simple. Grant Innovations will purchase controlling interest at a 50% premium over the current stock price. Still a bargain, but better than where you'll be if the company continues its free fall. And what would prevent you from simply dismantling the company for parts? A legally binding commitment to maintain current employment levels for at least 2 years and to invest in modernization of both systems and corporate culture. As the investors considered his proposal, Emily was meeting with Nora Adebayo at a quiet coffee shop. Ms. Harper has filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, Nora informed her. She's claiming she was following unwritten company policy regarding passenger profiling. Emily sighed. Will I need to testify? Most likely, but we've compiled evidence from 12 other incidents involving Ms. Harper. You won't be standing alone. What happens now? Emily asked. To Prestige, I mean. We're hearing rumors the company might not survive. That depends, Nora said carefully, on decisions being made right now. But I can tell you this. Marcus Grant isn't interested in destroying lives, just in accountability and change. Emily nodded slowly. That's why I risked my job to speak up. Some things matter more than a paycheck. Later that night, as Edward Langston was being escorted from Prestige headquarters, suspended pending investigation, he received an unexpected video call request from Marcus Grant. Against his lawyers, advice he accepted. Come to gloat? Edward asked bitterly. No, Marcus replied calmly. To offer perspective. Today feels like the end for you. It isn't. It's the beginning of accountability. You've destroyed everything I built. You destroyed it yourself, Edward. I merely exposed the truth. Edward leaned closer to the camera. This isn't over. Actually, it is, Marcus countered. But not for the 28,000 people who work for Prestige. They deserve better leadership. What are you saying? I'm saying that tomorrow, I'll be meeting with your board to discuss Grant Innovations acquiring controlling interest in Prestige Airways. A new chapter is beginning. As Edward stared in shock, Marcus ended the call. Outside his office window, the lights of San Francisco sparkled against the night sky. His phone buzzed with a message from Nora. Federal agents just served a warrant at Langston's residence. It's happening. Marcus nodded to himself. Let the empire crumble, he whispered again. But this time, he added, so we can build something better in its place. Edward Langston's private jet touched down at San Francisco International Airport under a sky heavy with rain clouds. The weather matched his mood, dark, turbulent, threatening. 3 days had passed since his suspension as CEO of Prestige Airways, and in that time, the company's stock had continued its free fall. His personal reputation had been shredded across media outlets, and the SEC had frozen several of his personal accounts, pending investigation. This meeting with Marcus Grant hadn't been his idea. The Prestige board, desperate to stop the bleeding, had practically begged him to attempt a personal negotiation with the man who had brought their company to its knees. Edward had agreed, not out of loyalty to Prestige, but because he needed to look cooperative to mitigate his legal jeopardy. His driver navigated through the city to Grant Innovations' headquarters, a sleek, modern tower of glass and sustainable materials that seemed to capture light even on this gloomy day. Unlike the Baroque ostentation of prestige's Atlanta headquarters, Grant's building was elegant in its simplicity, its power understated. "Wait here," Edward instructed his driver as they pulled up to the entrance. "This shouldn't take long." The security guard at the reception desk looked up as Edward approached. "Mr. Langston, please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Edward checked his watch. He was precisely on time for the 10:00 a.m. meeting that had been arranged. He sat stiffly on one of the minimalist lobby chairs, refusing the offered coffee. At 10:45, Edward approached the desk again. "Excuse me, I had a 10-guard meeting with Marcus Grant." "Yes, sir. Mr. Grant is aware you're here. Please continue to wait." Edward's face flushed with anger, but he returned to his seat. By 11:30, he was pacing the lobby. By noon, his forced composure had completely eroded. "This is unacceptable," he snapped at the receptionist. "I'm a CEO, not some salesman waiting for a pitch meeting." "Former CEO," came a cool female voice from behind him. Edward turned to find Nora Adebayo watching him with detached interest. "Mr. Grant will see you now." Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked toward the elevators. Edward hurried to catch up, his wounded pride temporarily forgotten. "Is this how Grant conducts business?" he demanded as they rode up to the executive floor. "Keeping people waiting for hours?" Nora regarded him with a look that made Edward feel transparent. "Mr. Grant's time is extremely valuable. Yours, increasingly less so." The elevator doors opened directly into Marcus's office, a spacious room with panoramic views of the bay. Marcus stood with his back to the door, looking out at the city below. "Mr. Grant," Edward began, forcing confidence into his voice, "I appreciate you taking the time to meet. I think we can resolve this situation to everyone's benefit." Marcus turned slowly. "Please sit down, Edward." Something in his tone, the casual use of his first name, the complete lack of deference, made Edward's hackles rise, but he complied, taking a seat across from Marcus's desk. "Let's cut to the chase," Edward said, leaning forward. "You've made your point. You've hurt our stock, damaged our reputation. You've got your revenge for that unfortunate incident at the airport. Now let's talk about moving forward." Marcus observed him silently for a moment. "Do you believe that's what this is about? Revenge for an unfortunate incident? What else would it be?" Edward countered with a dismissive wave. "Look, these things happen. Our employee was overzealous. We've fired her. I'm personally apologizing. To you now. What more do you want?" "Accountability," Marcus replied simply. "For patterns, not incidents. For systems, not individuals." Edward scoffed. "Don't give me that social justice nonsense. We both know this is business. You're using this situation for leverage. Fine. Name your price." "My price," Marcus repeated, as if testing the concept. He pressed a button on his desk, and a holographic display activated between them, showing Prestige Airways' corporate structure with highlighted sections indicating areas of corruption, fraud, and misconduct. "Let me tell you what my investigation has uncovered, Edward. 6 years of falsified maintenance records, 12 sexual harassment cases buried through aggressive NDAs, discriminatory hiring practices systematically concealed from federal regulators, money laundering through your charter subsidiary. Shall I continue?" Edward's face had gone pale. "Those allegations are fully documented," Marcus interrupted, expanding a section of the display to show emails, financial records, and internal memos, many bearing Edward's signature or direct approvals. "Every single one." "Those are private company records. You hacked us. That's corporate espionage." Edward sputtered. "Interesting that your concern is how we obtained evidence of your crimes, not the crimes themselves," Marcus observed. "What do you want?" Edward demanded, his bluster gone. I want Prestige Airways, Marcus stated simply. Grant Innovations will acquire controlling interest at $20 per share. Edward barked out a bitter laugh. That's less than a third of its value from just last week. It's twice what it's trading for right now, Marcus countered calmly. And significantly more than it will be worth after the federal indictments come down. Edward studied the man across from him, searching for a weakness, an angle, some way to regain the upper hand. Finding none, he tried a different approach. And if I help facilitate this acquisition, what's in it for me, personally? The possibility of avoiding federal prison, Marcus replied. I have enough evidence to ensure you spend the next decade in a cell, Edward. Cooperate fully with the transition. Sign a complete confession of your role in Prestige's illegal activities, and I'll ensure that confession emphasizes your assistance in exposing corporate wrongdoing. You expect me to confess? To destroy myself? Edward was incredulous. I expect you to recognize reality, Marcus said. Your empire is already crumbling. The only question is whether you go down with it. Edward stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This meeting is over. My attorneys will be in touch. You haven't heard the last of this, Grant. As he stormed toward the elevator, Marcus's voice followed him. Actually, I have. A car is waiting to take you to your next meeting with the FBI field office downtown. They're quite interested in discussing those offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Edward froze, turning slowly. You wouldn't dare. Marcus met his gaze, evenly. I already have. The elevator doors opened to reveal two serious-looking men in suits. Edward Langston, FBI. We'd like you to come with us to answer some questions. As Edward was escorted out, Nora entered from a side door. That went exactly as predicted. Of course it did, Marcus replied. Men like Edward always believe they're the smartest person in the room, right up until the moment they realize they've lost everything. Speaking of losing everything, Nora said, checking her secure tablet, our sources say Edward has been planning a counter-move. He instructed Lucas Vaughn to fabricate a scandal about you, something involving financial improprieties with minority contractors. Marcus's expression didn't change. And we intercepted it before they could place the story. In fact, we've reversed it. The financial documents they fabricated have been traced back to their source, Vaughn's own laptop. The FBI now has evidence of their attempted fraud. Perfect, Marcus nodded. What about the board? Catherine Reed has been quietly building support among the members. With Edward now being questioned by federal authorities, I expect they'll vote on our offer within 24 hours. Across town, in a much less glamorous setting, Jaden Carter was being escorted into a private meeting room at Grant Innovations Recruitment Center. He'd received a mysterious invitation the previous day with no explanation beyond an opportunity to discuss your future. When the door opened, Marcus Grant walked in, causing Jaden to jump to his feet. Mr. Grant, I didn't know I'd be meeting with you personally. Please sit down, Jaden, Marcus said with a warm smile that transformed his usually serious demeanor. And call me Marcus. Still stunned, Jaden sat back down. I don't understand why I'm here. You're here because you showed integrity when it mattered, Marcus explained, taking a seat across from him. Because you recognized injustice and weren't afraid to stand against it, even at personal risk. Anyone would have done the same, Jaden said modestly. No, Marcus shook his head. They wouldn't. Most people look away. Most people stay silent. You didn't. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an offer letter for a position at Grant Innovations, a management training program with a salary that made Jaden's eyes widen. I don't have the experience for something like this, Jaden stammered. Experience can be gained, Marcus replied. Character has to be built over a lifetime. You've already demonstrated the character we value at Grant Innovations. As Jaden struggled to find words, Marcus continued. We rise not just for ourselves, Jaden, but so others don't have to start where we did. Someone took a chance on me when I was younger than you are now. It's time to pay that forward. At Prestige headquarters, Emily found herself unexpectedly summoned to meet with Catherine Reed. She'd never directly interacted with the COO before and felt nervous as she was ushered into Catherine's office. "Emily, thank you for coming," Catherine greeted her warmly. "Please have a seat." "Am I in trouble?" Emily asked hesitantly. Catherine smiled. "Quite the opposite. I wanted to personally thank you for your courage in speaking out about what happened with Susan Harper and Mr. Grant." "I just did what felt right," Emily said. "And that's precisely why I wanted to talk to you," Catherine replied. Prestige is about to undergo significant changes. I've been asked to help build a new corporate ethics division, one with actual authority to address discrimination and misconduct. I'd like you to be part of that team. Emily's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just a gate agent." "You're someone who recognizes right from wrong and has the courage to act on it," Catherine corrected her. "That's exactly who we need right now." As these conversations were taking place, Susan Harper sat in her attorney's office, reviewing the wrongful termination lawsuit they were preparing to file against Prestige Airways. "We'll argue that you were following unwritten but understood company policies," her lawyer explained. "That you were made a scapegoat to protect executives who established these discriminatory practices." Susan nodded vigorously. "Exactly. I was just doing what was expected. They can't pin this all on me." Her attorney looked uncomfortable. "There's just one problem. Prestige's legal team has sent over some documentation in advance of our filing. Video compilations, passenger complaints, performance reviews where you were warned about similar behavior. Those are taken out of context," Susan protested. "Perhaps, but they're also preparing a countersuit for damages, claiming your actions have cost the company millions in lost business and reputation damage." Susan's face fell. "They can't do that. I was a loyal employee for 15 years. They can, and based on what I'm seeing, they might win," her attorney said grimly. "Ms. Harper, I have to advise you that proceeding with this lawsuit could leave you personally liable for significant damages." Meanwhile, the Prestige Board of Directors had convened to vote on Grant Innovation's acquisition offer. The discussion was heated, with opinions sharply divided. "This is highway robbery," argued one director. "Grant is taking advantage of our vulnerability." "Our vulnerability is self-inflicted," countered Thomas Freeman. "The alternative is bankruptcy, federal receivership, and thousands of lost jobs. At least Grant is committing to maintain employment levels. Can we trust him?" asked another board member skeptically. Catherine Reed spoke up. "Marcus Grant built a multi-billion-dollar company based on principles of integrity and innovation. His reputation in the business world is impeccable. Can we say the same about our leadership under Edward?" After hours of debate, the vote was taken, 11-3 in favor of accepting Grant Innovation's offer. As news of the acquisition broke, financial analysts scrambled to assess the implications. "This is unprecedented," remarked a CNBC commentator. Grant Innovations, primarily a tech and AI company, acquiring a major airline? It's a bold move that transforms both companies overnight. In a federal holding facility, Edward Langston learned of the vote from his attorney. His face contorted with rage as the reality set in. His empire, his legacy, his reputation, all destroyed in less than a week. "This isn't over," he growled. "Grant hasn't heard the last of me." His attorney looked uncomfortable. "Edward, you need to focus on your legal defense right now. The federal prosecutors have offered a deal, but it requires your full cooperation in their investigation of Prestige's financial practices." "I'll never cooperate with them," Edward snapped. "I built that company." "And now you might spend 20 years in federal prison," his attorney replied bluntly. "Is your pride worth that?" As Edward grappled with his new reality, Marcus was meeting with his executive team to plan the integration of Prestige into Grant Innovations. The transition will be complex, his CFO warned. Prestige's corporate culture is completely different from ours. That's precisely why we're acquiring them, Marcus replied. Not just for their roots and assets, but for the opportunity to transform an industry that has remained resistant to true change. And the name? Asked his chief marketing officer. Do we keep the Prestige brand? Marcus shook his head. No, that name is tainted now. We need something new, something that symbolizes the transformation we're undertaking. Grant Air has a nice ring to it, suggested the CMO. Marcus considered it, then nodded. Grant Air, he repeated, where everyone belongs. 3 months had passed since the acquisition, and the aviation industry was still adjusting to the seismic shift. The former Prestige Airways, now rebranded as Grant Air, had undergone a remarkable transformation that extended far beyond its name and logo. On a bright spring morning, thousands gathered for the official launch of Grant Air at Washington National Airport, the very place where Marcus Grant had been humiliated months earlier. A temporary stage had been set up on the tarmac, with the first official Grant airplane as a backdrop, its sleek design featuring a new logo that incorporated elements of both companies. News crews jostled for position as Marcus stepped up to the podium, looking perfectly at ease in the spotlight, despite his usual preference for privacy. Today marks not just the beginning of a new airline, he began, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd, but a new vision for what air travel can and should be. Grant Air is founded on a simple principle, that every passenger, every employee, every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Where everyone belongs isn't just our slogan, it's our promise. Applause rippled through the audience as Marcus outlined the company's initial policies: mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff, anonymous reporting systems for passengers and employees, partnerships with education initiatives in underserved communities, and, perhaps most surprisingly, a program offering free flights to students who couldn't otherwise afford to visit prospective colleges. We believe that mobility, physical, economic, social, is a right, not a privilege, Marcus continued. And we're building an airline that reflects that belief in every aspect of its operation. Seated in the front row, Jaden Carter watched, with barely contained emotion. 6 months ago, he had been an undervalued intern, witnessing discrimination firsthand. Now, he was a rising star in Grant Innovations' management training program. And today, he would be speaking on national televisions. About his experience, when Marcus introduced him, Jaden approached the podium with a mixture of nervousness and determination. My story begins with a simple act of recognition, Jaden told the audience. Recognizing injustice when I saw it, and recognizing that remaining silent wasn't an option. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But it's also about recognizing potential, not just in ourselves, but in systems we often take for granted. An airline isn't just a business. It's a gateway to opportunity, to connection, to the wider world. And everyone deserves access to that gateway. As Jaden spoke, cameras panned to the diverse group of executives seated behind him, including Emily, now head of the newly formed Passenger Experience and Equality Division, and Vincent Brooks, who had accepted the position of Director of Security Operations for Grant Air. After the speeches, as the invited guests and media toured the first Grant airplane, with its redesigned interior focused on accessibility and comfort for all passengers, Marcus slipped away for a private moment with Catherine Reed. The board ratified your appointment as CEO this morning, he told her. Congratulations. Catherine shook her head in amazement. A year ago, I was hitting glass ceilings at every turn under Edward. Now I'm running the company. You were always the most qualified person for the job, Marcus replied. Edward just couldn't see past his own prejudices. And what about you? Catherine asked. What's next for Marcus Grant? He smiled slightly. I have other systems to transform. Meanwhile, in a federal courtroom across town, Edward Langston was accepting a plea deal. 15 years reduced to 7 in exchange for testimony against other executives involved in prestigious financial crimes. His attorney had convinced him that fighting the charges would only result in a longer sentence, given the mountain of evidence. As he was led from the courtroom, a reporter called out, "Mr. Langston, do you have any comment on today's launch of Grant Air?" Edward turned, his face tight with suppressed rage, but said nothing as marshals escorted him away. That evening, as media outlets ran stories about Grant Air's launch and Edward Langston's plea deal, Nora Adebayo was promoted to Chief Operating Officer of Grant Innovations in a small, private ceremony. "Your loyalty and brilliance deserve recognition," Marcus told her as he presented her with a symbolic key to the executive floor. "You saw this through from the beginning." "We both did," Nora replied with a rare smile. "Justice doesn't always come swiftly, but it does come." 2 weeks later, Marcus's private jet touched down in his childhood neighborhood in Chicago's South Side. The area had changed over the decades, but the challenges remained: underinvestment, limited opportunities, systemic barriers to advancement. As he walked the streets of his youth, memories flooded back. The foster homes, the racial bullying, the constant struggle to be seen as more than his circumstances. He paused outside his old elementary school, now somewhat dilapidated from years of budget cuts. The school principal, Dr. Angela Thompson, greeted him at the entrance. "Mr. Grant, thank you for coming personally. The children are so excited to meet you." "The pleasure is mine," Marcus assured her. "Is everything prepared for the announcement?" "Yes, though I still can't quite believe it's happening." Inside the school gymnasium, hundreds of students gathered, buzzing with excitement at the special assembly. When Marcus took the stage, a hush fell over the room. "I stood where you're sitting now, many years ago," he began softly, "dreaming of a future that seemed impossible from these chairs. Today, I'm here to tell you that nothing is impossible when you combine talent with opportunity." He unveiled the plans for what would become the Grant Foundation's flagship initiative. A $50 million investment in the neighborhood, including a state-of-the-art technology center, scholarship programs, and a comprehensive mentorship network connecting students with professionals across multiple industries. "This isn't charity," Marcus emphasized. "This is investment in you, in your potential, in our shared future." As the children and teachers erupted in applause, Marcus felt a rare moment of pure, unfiltered emotion. This was why he had built Grant Innovations, why he had taken on Prestige Airways, not for power or revenge, but for transformation, to create change that would outlast him. Later that evening, as his plane prepared for departure, Marcus found himself thinking about a moment from his childhood. Sitting on the steps of the foster home, working on equations that no one else understood, trying to predict patterns to prevent disaster. He'd come full circle. The patterns he'd identified had led not just to personal success, but to systemic change. The equations had balanced after all. 3 days later, Marcus boarded the inaugural official flight of Grant Air, a symbolic journey from Washington to San Francisco. As he settled into his first-class seat, he noted the subtle but significant differences from his previous experiences. The diverse flight crew who greeted every passenger with the same level of respect. The redesigned cabin focused on comfort and accessibility. The clear messaging throughout the plane emphasizing dignity for all travelers. A flight attendant approached with a glass of water. "Mr. Grant, it's an honor to have you aboard today." "Thank you," Marcus replied with a genuine smile. "It's an honor to be here." As the plane taxied toward the runway, Marcus gazed out the window at the Grant Air logo emblazoned on the wing. The aircraft gathered speed, lifting smoothly into the sky above Washington. Below, the city grew smaller, its patterns and systems visible from this new perspective. Marcus Grant had changed those patterns not through destruction, but through transformation. As the plane banked westward toward San Francisco, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. This wasn't the end of a journey. It was the beginning of a legacy. What does true power look like? The ability to destroy, or the wisdom to transform? Marcus's journey reminds us that justice isn't about revenge, but creating a world where everyone truly belongs. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share to help others discover what happens when discrimination meets its match. True strength lies not in tearing down, but in building up. Marcus's journey teaches us to transform pain into purpose, creating a world where dignity lifts every soul.